This is the Liberal Europe podcast by ELF, bringing liberal ideas into the political debate, with Leszek Jezdrzewski and Ricardo Silvestra.
Hello, welcome to Liberal Europe. This is Leszek Jezdrzewski, and today we're going to talk about elections in Czech Republic, which are going to happen on October 3rd and 4th. And I have a guest and a good colleague of mine, Martin L., who is the chief analyst of main Czech economic newspaper Hospodářské noviny. Martin, welcome to Liberal Europe.
Hello, thank you very much for the invitation.
So before we start talking about what's happening at the moment, I wanted to ask you about the past elections, because the current ruling coalition were not the front runners in the polls, and Spolu under the leadership of Petr Fiala, current prime minister, but they won a victory which seemed surprising at the moment. Can you sort of come back to this previous moments 4 years ago and tell us a bit what happened and which parties are making this ruling coalition at this moment?
Well, how much time we have, because it's a long story. To make it short, at that time 4 years ago, it was more about anti-populist, anti-Babiš sentiment than it is now. So there was a huge will and struggle to get over Mr. Babiš and his movement ANO, which means yes, and to create kind of united front, to use the old-fashioned term, and to basically create the notion that there is a possibly, what you say in Poland, a new beginning for the Czech politics after Babiš. And also there was no such a big gap in polls between the frontrunner, which was at the time as it is now, Mr. Babiš movement ANO, and the second, the coalition Spolu, which consists of three parties. The main party is ODS, civic party, let's say traditional conservative one, plus Top 09, which is small, probably more pro-European, which is the main difference between ODS, which is Eurosceptic party traditionally. And the third part are Christian Democrats. So to compare it to Poland, it's like PSL. And these two small parties would probably not be able 4 years ago, and definitely not now, to cross the 5% threshold to the parliament. So they have created a coalition, let's say conservative one, and to show kind of unity against Babiš. So this is what they are trying to repeat now. The situation is different, and there are also other two parties which were part of the previous government, which is now going to end. And these two parties are STAN, which is movement of mayors, which is, let's say, a liberal pro-European party or movement. And then Pirates, which was at that time more, let's say, liberal, more let's say left liberal, oriented towards more young people. And these two parties created also a coalition. So we had in these elections 4 years ago, two, at the time, opposition coalitions going after Babiš. So it was like, one more conservative, one more liberal, and the united topic was everybody against Babiš. And on this premises, they have created the coalition 4 years ago. During the time, so it was 5-party coalition. You in Poland know something about it now, about the coalitions of this size, and how hard it is to manage all clashes and interest within such a coalition. So during this last 4 years, one of the parties, Pirates, left the coalition because their minister, who was at the time also the head of the party, struggled to reform one of the, let's say, key registries in digital part of the state, which was the construction register, or how to translate it into proper English. And basically, the party which portrayed itself before as a kind of youngish, IT-oriented, digital state-oriented party was not able to implement one successful program. So it was a big disaster for the government 2 years ago, approximately, more or less. So they left the coalition, and now it's four-party coalition still with the majority in the parliament, and they go into elections as a coalition Spolu, Party Stan, and Party Pirates. So this is the state of the play from the government side at the moment, in comparison what happened in the last 4 years. And of course, now as a governing party, governing politicians, they are much more easily to be criticized, and they weren't quite successful in terms of implementing different reforms and promises they did 4 years ago. So this is also contributing quite a lot to their unpopularity, because, and maybe we will talk later a little bit in detail about polls, but they are now trailing behind Babiš much more than it was 4 years ago.
Right. So perhaps before I ask you about the polls, I mean, because it seems quite natural that 5-party or even 4-party coalition is hard to manage. But I'm wondering what are the main lines of attack from ANO on Spolu, and also to what extent people sort of forgot about Babiš. I know that he had the case in the courts, which has been returned for, I think, for the first time to the first instance. So I suppose that on those, let's say, maybe not corruption, but with those fraudulent actions, allegedly fraudulent actions related to EU subsidies, this is still the case, which is present in the sort of public discourse. So I'm wondering to what extent people forgot about ANO in the past, ruling in the previous coalition, and what is the line of attack on by ANO on Spolu and ruling coalition at the moment?
Well, let's spend 2 minutes, not more, on this case of Mr. Babiš, because this is not important at all for the Czech voters. It's going back to the beginning. People are tired. Basically, they understand that Babiš kind of used the opportunity to grab some EU money, and basically they don't care at the moment because it's so long. It's going so long. It's going back to the beginning. And for Babiš, it's only one of the topics on which he can say, "Look, they are politicizing. I didn't do anything wrong." And for his voters, definitely, this is not a topic. And for the others, they are tired of that, because the courts were not able to produce the results. And this kind of behavior, I think that, and it's familiar to other post-communist societies. Sometimes it's much more kind of valued as a thing that you go around the system and use the system for your own purposes. Then if you work and behave according to the rules. So for some and basic, Babiš is opportunist. Babiš is the crystal of opportunism, or how to call it. He does only what he thinks is good for him at the moment. If at the moment would be good for him, to say, okay, I stole money, then he would say that, and he would knew that there is nothing wrong about it. So this topic of this fraud, which higher court said it was fraud. Now it's going back to the first instant court, and we will not hear anything about that only after elections, because already the judge said, I will make some decisions only after elections, and then we will see, the theater of how possibly old and new MP Babiš will have to be, given the approval by the parliament for the court to be prosecuted. So he will use it as a theater, for his own purposes. So back to the main line of attacks. The current government was not, and we can use the past tense, was not able to deliver the things which people would consider important for their daily life. There was a still struggle with the high inflation. They have promised some reforms on the business side, on the digital stateside. I have mentioned that one of the reforms was completely botched. It was disaster, not only from the technical point of view, because now it's quite hard to get the construction permission because the local authorities are working with the old system, but partially turned to the new system. So it's like a nightmare from the political as well from the practical point of view. So for people, for average voters, it's quite hard to associate this government with something good. The government is playing. Government parties are playing this, security or defense card. We are successful in supporting Ukraine. But for average people, this doesn't make any sense. Because unlike in Poland, for example, or Baltic countries, we don't feel directly threatened by Russia. So it's more like using the topic of, for example, support of refugees from Ukraine as a kind of tool against the government, because not only Babiš but also the more extreme parties are saying, well, you are giving money to not to our people. Our people. This is in Czech, naši lidé. This is kind of mantra, for the critics of the government, that you are not supporting our people, that you are supporting the others, and then you can use it in connection with many topics, from social support to housing crisis. This is huge thing in Czech Republic, and for many people, this is the topic which was not tackled by the government at all, especially in the big cities. Inflation, and Babiš is very skillfully using all affairs and the different and the problems. Last time we had a big Bitcoin affair, so-called, that the Minister of Justice has approved that in exchange for some Bitcoins to give freedom to one of the, probably there was no court decision, so it was the decision of the minister, one of the guys who probably made a lot of Bitcoins in the black market, to make story short. And when it was revealed, it was huge blow. The minister is not the minister anymore, and new minister, nice lady, a very popular one, is trying somehow to polish the thing, not to solve the issue itself. It's impossible probably at the moment, but to polish the affair. And the funny thing is, and again, not speaking about the Poles, but speaking about the Poles, that it was not still affecting the support of Spolu. In a way, some observers expected that it will damage their support and reputation. So there are many, like, I wouldn't say like one big affair, but many small things, many mistakes done by the ministers, by the governing coalition, that Babiš is skillfully using much actively the social networks, Instagram, TikTok. He's aiming also to the young voters, which might seem surprise, but I think, for example, in Poland, you have the similar experience, that the governing coalition is much better positioned towards the middle-aged and older people than the opposition party. So I think if there is some similarity, so we have the same notion here, and it's not only about Babiš but also about some extremist parties using this to attract the first time voters and the young voters in general. So it's like if you look at the campaigns, you see that Babiš probably is using much more money than he, but I cannot prove it, than it's allowed to for campaigns, but definitely his team seems much more skilled and much more like using every technical as well as a political tool to explore the different possibilities.
Right. So I think this is the time to look at the polls, and seems, of course, I started by asking you about the recent elections, because at the time the polls also indicated different results. But as you mentioned, now it seems that almost nothing can prevent Andrej Babiš from becoming a new prime minister or can it, or is it also like a potential coalition government? So he has to form a coalition government with the smaller party, or is it likely that he can, independently of how his potential partners will do in the elections, he can win, and basically it's just a question of time before he become a prime minister?
Well, I will still avoid the numbers for a minute because your question, if Babiš will become prime minister, it's not connected directly with the polls, to say so, because he can win elections but decide that he will not be prime minister. This is a realistic option that he will be driving from the backseat. You know something about that in Poland, I guess. So this is also a very possible scenario that his movement will win elections, but there is officially the shadow prime minister is somebody else than Mr. Babiš. So this can happen very easily because Babiš is not the youngest, and he likes the power, but he can have a power without all the boring duties of being prime minister, to say so. So there is still this possibility, but let's go to the numbers now, finally. The last numbers are showing, that sociologists are telling always that don't look at the actual numbers, look at the trends. So ANO is now having more than 30% of support, and this support grows. From where this growth is coming, it's coming from his possible coalition partners, which are extremist party with the shortage SPD, but it's not SPD like we know from Germany, but this is, let's say, the nationalistic, isolationist, Eurosceptical party, which has now around 11%, but it has had 13%. So the trend is going down, and the people are going to Babiš because the same happens to a grouping which is called Stačilo in Czech. And we can translate it's enough, or it's enough, basta, yeah. And this is cover for communists, and with some social democrats on their lists. So, and they are also going down. Actually, it was like last time it was around 7%, and I remind you that there is 5% threshold. So. It will really depend on how many parties of this kind, of this extremist part, will go over the 5%, because we have another extremist party which can possibly go over the threshold of 5%, which they are called motorists, and these are, let's say, right-wing parties. The right-wing party with appeal for young, less educated, first-time voters. They have succeeded to put 2 MPs into European Parliament during the European elections. So they made a kind of wave on that. But now they are going under 4%. So trend. And in between these 5% and 30% for Babiš, on the second place is this coalition Spolu we were talking about. So these 3 conservative parties, they are now over 20% and a little bit going up, which is surprise because of this Bitcoin affair. On the, let's say, third place or fourth place, there is this party STAN of, let's say, European liberals, part of the governing coalition at the moment. And the 5th place is taken by Pirates. They are between 8 and 9%, and in the last polls, they are going a little bit down. So, purely mathematically, at this moment, current government coalition would not be able to put together a majority. Babiš would have much more than 100 seats in the lower chamber. We have 200 deputies, so you need 101 as a to secure your majority. But as I mentioned, that Babiš is taking the voters from these 2 extremist parties, that of course these extremists would be happy to govern and to impose things like law on the referendum about the NATO and EU. But for Babiš, this would probably be maybe too much. And there is a widespread speculation in the, let's say, political circles. for the last couple of weeks, and it's not like disappearing over the summer. That maybe the more viable thing for Babiš would be not to be connected with these extremists. Of course, it would be easy for him that he would either make minority government with the support of them for certain issues, or that they would be split after the lost elections in ODS, on this conservative party, and that part of the ODS would support, let's call it big coalition with Babiš, and that for the sake of the big danger in the east, we have to be united, so they can create a nice narrative around that, and then they can somehow divide the powers. But this is unacceptable for the current head of ODS, Mr. Petr Fiala, Prime Minister, who, as we are recording, it was yesterday, made a unofficial deal with another big governing party, Stan, fourth place in the polls, that they will not go into the coalition with Babiš, because also there was a speculation that basically for the sake of democracy and security they will create this big coalition. I don't know, and then we can speculate on many different scenarios within this. The most probable at this moment is that Babiš will go somehow with the extremists, either minority or majority, with some. But for him, it would be also kind of a danger and dangerous territory to go.
Right. So, for the sake of time, there are many issues that perhaps could be asked about a hitman hired to kill a dog, or banning communist propaganda in the country, which still has a communist party. But I think it's more important, as you said, that seems that Babiš might be not a prime minister, but he definitely be in power, and he will be a power broker, deciding with whom he wants to form a coalition. How, in your opinion, it seems that this pro-Western, pro-Ukrainian direction calls of the Czech government will change, and to what extent do you think that would be this full-blown comeback of populist politics that we remember from 4 years back? How do you think that could be different from the previous Babiš government? So your prediction for the future of the ANO-led government of Czechia?
I would, for the kind of idea, I would look into the Slovakia and Hungary. Even we are not Slovakia and Hungary, and situation here is different because many of our institutions are working differently. We have second chamber, which is in the hands of what is now governing coalition. We have independent courts, we have independent media, but the new government will probably look like what we see now in Hungary and Slovakia vis-a-vis Ukraine. But on the other hand, the Czech companies are making a good money. So in Slovakia, for example, we have to distinguish between rhetoric of Prime Minister Fico, I will not send anything to Ukraine, and what are companies and state-owned among them, how much are they making profit out of selling ammunition to Ukraine. So I think it will be, in these terms, it will be like, rhetorically, it will look really awfully, but it will be very pragmatic in business terms. So I would not put the Czech Republic still in the same basket with Slovakia and Hungary until they will prove that they are going this direction. Either will be the shape of the governing coalition. It can be really bad. They will probably start with the change of public media law. At least this is kind of something which everybody thinks is given. Nothing is given until you vote. But basically, people from public media are afraid that they will put together a public television and public radio, and they will kind of govern it and squeeze it in a Slovakian way or Hungarian way, or as it was. But we have, for example, in comparison with Poland, we have still a very strong part of independent media, which is problem in Hungary, and it's so in Slovakia. So there will be like nuances and differences. So from abroad, it can look like the same way, but there are many things which are hopefully will be different. I hope I am not mistaken in that.
All right, that seems like quite a hopeful message for the future, despite the circumstances. We'll have to see how it develops over the course of the next couple of weeks. Martinel, thank you so much for being with us today at Liberal Europe.
Thank you for the invitation. It was a pleasure.
Okay, that's all for me for today. Please tune in for Ricardo Silvestre next week. Until 2 weeks. Goodbye.
You were listening to the Liberal Europe podcast by the European Liberal Forum. This podcast was co-financed by the European Parliament.